Hello and welcome to the Black Hat Bushcraft channel. This afternoon, let's take a look in depth at the WC Knives Master Bushman. Let's get started. Alright, so without any further ado, here's a close-up look at the WC Master Bushman. And before I go any further, I would like to say that this knife was sent to me by my good friends at Ridgerunner Blades in Wilkesboro, North Carolina. And if you happen to be in their area, I strongly recommend that you stop by their showroom. They are first class all the way. They have a ton of knives in stock, and they have a full line of WC knives as well that you can go in and hold and check out in person. I know it's hard sometimes to look at a video or look at pictures and decide if a knife is right for you, but if you're near Ridgerunner Blades, you can stop in and hold some of these knives and check them out for yourself and find out if they're right for you. Of course, Ridgerunner Blades has a website, www.ridgerunnerblades.com, so check them out. They are the newest WC knives retailer, and if you go to see them, let them know that I sent you. All right, with all that said, let's get started. I know for a lot of people, stats are really important. So for the cutting edge on the Master Bushman, from the tip to the base of the blade, we have a 4.25 inch cutting edge, and the handle length is 4.75. So the overall length of this knife is 8.75 inches, and that really depends on how you measure it. This knife is a full tang knife, and it has an exposed tang here on the pommel that has a sharp 90-degree spine. If I remove this little pinky lanyard, that exposed pommel can become a functional tool, like processing bark and things like that. It could become something to strike with, and it could also be a glass breaker. Of course, your imagination is the limit of what that could be used for. So it does have that, and of course, as we're talking about 90-degree spines, this knife does have a 90-degree spine. It's made out of 5/32 stock steel, so it's a little bit of a heftier knife. A lot of times I use 1/8 inch thick knives, but this one is a little bit heftier, so it's made to work hard. It's made to handle batoning and things that a bushman may do. The knife here is of Nitro V stainless steel. You can see this one's dated October 21. I love that William is laser engraving all of these knives, and that he actually puts the production date, so you'll know when you get your knife what month and year it was made. Again, this one is Nitro V stainless steel, which is something in the last year or so that William started using, and he's still using AEBL and 01 as well. As you would expect with a stainless steel knife, you can process food, fruit, acidic things like that. When you work with woods that are high in tannin, like oak and things like that, an 01 blade will start to tarnish right off, which doesn't bother me. I've got tarnished knives and they're beautiful to me. But if you are kind of worried about that, having a stainless steel knife is nice. You don't have to maintain it as much as far as cleaning goes and oiling. It just handles it very well. So a lot of times with stainless, people don't like the fact that these knives are hard to sharpen, or harder to sharpen than high carbon steel. But the heat treat that Williams got on these, they really are just as easy to me as my 01. I've got several knives from WC that are AEBL, and I really like that a lot. And I've got a couple now with this Nitro V, and it does not bother me at all. The only downside to a stainless steel is if you were in an emergency scenario and you wanted to use a rock to throw sparks off the back of the knife, that only works with a high carbon steel knife. With stainless, you are sacrificing that one virtue of the knife, I would say, which for some people is going to be a big deal. For me, I buy a knife to use as a knife. I want it to cut good. I want it to hold its edge. I want it to be hair popping sharp. And with these stainless steels that William's using, the heat treat he's using on them, it just works for me. So I don't mind that. I just have to make sure that I have extra methods of fire starting in an emergency. Looking at this knife, you can see that it is definitely unorthodox in its design, and that may intimidate a lot of people, but this knife really is very well thought out, and it performs very well. And of course, I'm going to do some demonstrations with it so you can see it in action. First of all, what stands out right off the bat is this unusual blade shape and these grinds. Of course, we have a couple different things going on. We have a curved Scandi grind down here at the base into a tooth right here, and then we have a saber grind up to the tip. With this tip, we have a strong drop point, and that's a very familiar design. If you're familiar with the Kephart style knife, That's basically what we have going on here. And a Kephart knife is designed, of course, as a woodsman's knife and a skinning knife. When you go to skin game, you get that tip right under the skin, and having that curved hump back here on the back helps to lift and separate. So this knife could definitely do skinning chores because of this familiar tip. With the curved Scandi, the idea behind that is we have a constant curvature which is going to slice even when you press straight down. If you have a straight blade and you cut straight down, you're basically wedging material off of the blade. When you have a curved blade, or in this case a slanted blade, you're constantly slicing even when you're moving the knife straight down. If I were to come down the feather stick, as I go down, you can see how that curvature naturally slices, again, even on a straight motion. Of course, the virtue of a Scandi is it's a more stout grind. It's good for woodworking. It's good for hogging material off when you're carving. It's good for wedging and splitting materials when you're doing fire prep, making kindling, and things like that. The virtue of a saber grind is it's great for slicing material such as foods, meat, vegetables, things that you're going to put in a stew pot. When you use a Scandi, if you have a thinner blade, it works fine. But a Scandi, again, tends to break material open as you push through, whereas this saber doesn't have those shoulders that you have here on the Scandi. And so it just does perform better when you're slicing veggies, meat, and things like that. Of course, with this tooth, we have an extra tool there. When you go to open those boxes, man, that works really good. But it's also good if you choke up on this blade, you can use that little tooth for fine detail work. When you turn this blade around, having that hook into the tooth right there gives us something that we can use to pull. The other thing that may catch your eye right off the bat is this Sure Touch handle. And if you're not familiar with Sure Touch, it's basically layers of G10 and rubber. Think like tire rubber. It's a very stout rubber. It's not soft or squishy. It's a very firm but grippy material. I'm going to hold this up to the camera. You can hear as I rub my thumb across it, you can tell that there's that friction there. So that's good because it gives you a nice controlled grip on your handle. Even when the stuff is wet, it performs well, it holds well in the hand, and of course it looks pretty neat too. So you can see all of those layers. Each of those little black stripes is a little layer of rubber, and then G10, rubber, G10. It's pretty brilliant, whoever came up with that. But again, it's an attractive handle. There's a lot of different colors of this. It's just a very nice rigid material and gives you a nice good grip on your knife, gives you plenty of control. All right, so let's go ahead and process down some materials to use for projects. And I will say, when you go to baton with this knife, if you place that little tooth right in the center of your material, it gives you a nice good grip, and from there easy to split down this material. Now I am using seasoned tulip poplar, but soft materials like that is what I would use for batoning anyway. I wouldn't use my knife to baton through seasoned oak or hickory or something like that. When you're going to be bushcrafting projects, softer woods are what you tend to need anyway for things like bow drills and feather sticks and stuff like that. So softer wood is what you want to be using your knife for this type of stuff, not driving it through seasoned hardwood. As you can see, with that 5/32 of an inch thick blade, it just wedges right through that material. And again, I think that little tooth helps in this regard. I'm a fan of using a light baton, as you can see here, and just kind of tapping it through. All right, so within short time, I've been able to process down some nice material. All right, so now that I have some decent material to work with, let's make a quick feather stick. And to get started, I'm going to take that tooth right there, right at the base of that, and just trace my material down to the tip of the knife. What I really want you to see in this is not how I make a feather stick, but how that blade interacts with the wood. All right, normally with a straight bladed knife, you have to work your wrist in order to create good feathers. All right, which is fine. That's a good skill to have. And as a woodsman, we want to have that. But I want you to notice how on this knife, all I have to do is just push forward. And as I push forward, I'm naturally going to slice down the blade. So that angle of that blade was not by chance. I know that when William designed this, he understood that principle and made the blade almost fail-proof as far as that goes. This material is not prime, but you can see how it just naturally, pushing straight down, feathers that wood out. A curved blade slices well, and you can do that with a straight blade. You just have to create the curvature with your angle. But with a blade like this, it's just naturally doing the work for you. So I do like that. And I do think this was well thought out, the angle of this blade. And as you can see, that thing's just making a nice little feather stick there, even with this less than perfect material. It's a little wet inside. But that's the main thing I want you to see, is because of the angle of that blade, how it just goes right down, slicing the material with a straight push. So if you have a hard time making feather sticks with a regular knife, this may be a good solution for you. I just knocked a few off there. So as you can see, not a bad little feather stick there. Definitely functional. This knife will do it. Let's do a number 7 notch. Notching is really important to me, and when I hold the knife, I want it to be comfortable in my hand when I'm doing this little delicate type work. First of all, we have a couple of options here. I can use the straight portion of that blade and kind of rock to cut into the material. Another thing I found works really well is if you come up here with that curved Scandi and rock. Boy, that thing really bites in well. And now from there, once again, we come back to that fine tip on this knife and just kind of push in with the thumb. We can make some nice little notches with that. And the tip on this knife, especially for a thicker knife, does allow you to get into these little tighter spaces like this and do that little fine detail work. I really like that about this knife, the tip. So I've often said that if a knife can create a good bale notch or pot notch, that it has the potential to be a good bushcraft knife. So let's do that with this knife now and see how it does. To get started, I'm just going to baton in the X formation here for my notch. And turn this around, come back from the other way. Looks good. And of course you can do that by hand, but it's just so much easier to baton that thing in. Or if you have an anvil like this to press down on. And now what I'm going to do is, using the angle of that blade, I'm going to come back and carve into that stop cut. And that blade angle actually makes that pretty easy. As you can see with that material, it comes right up to that cut at the diagonal. And now I'm going to reverse that. I'm going to start up here at the tip and push down towards that hook. And again, that angle is going to meet that stop cut once again. You can see how I'm holding that blade kind of high to get that good leverage point on it. And a bale notch is one of those things where you just kind of have to take your time and be delicate with it. This is actually a piece of harder material that I'm working with, so it makes it a little more challenging. Again, watch the angle of that blade in comparison to that stop cut. It just comes right down to it perfectly. Bite in, you hear that pop when all that material cuts free. And now come in here and clean out from the front, clean out underneath of that little point. You can also come in here like this, just bear down up under that little beak there. With this little tip right here, I can easily get up in here and work that notch. Does a good job of that. You can see what I've got. Nice clean notch. Of course, little stuff like this bothers me, so I have to come in and clean up the edge of that as well. So you can see what I've got there. Nice functional notch. And again, that little fine tip allows me to get up in those tight notches like that and do that little delicate detail work. So, Master Bushman, it can do a bale notch. All right, so let's talk about this Scandi portion right here for a minute. And one of the things that this does so well is shear cuts. And if you look at what's happening here, as I'm pulling the knife away, that curved Scandi is just slicing in so well. And I use a lot of reverse chest lever cuts like this cutting material off. When we're making trap triggers and things like that, a lot of times we have to split off a piece of this kind of material, some round wood. This is actually a piece of maple here, a shoot of a maple that was growing up off of a fallen maple. The tree was still alive. As you can see, it'll cut right through that stuff. So that's really what this part of the blade excels at, those power cuts like that. Just that curved portion of the blade just slides down, slicing that material so effectively. So that's definitely a good use for this portion of your blade right here. So one of the ways I tend to use my knife most in the woods is with draw cuts. And I also, again, as I mentioned, use reverse chest lever grips quite a bit. I want to show you as best I can on camera the curves of this handle. You can see that Coke bottle shape, which is designed to be a 3-position grip. You can choke back on it, hold it in a standard hammer grip position, and again, as I mentioned before, you can grab that thing, even put your ring finger here in that little middle choil, and then get your fingers on these blades like this to get a lot of leverage when you're peeling wood off and things like that. But in this draw cut, I want to show you that. I want you to see how my fingers fit every little curve of that knife. Put my thumb up here on the blade, this choil. Just want you to see how all of that geometry, you can even see this little scallop right here. Just my hand, it's like it's made for my hand. And from there, now I can draw cut to plane material down. I do this quite a bit, making bow drill sets or spoons, spatulas, even trap triggers. Sometimes I do that by drawing my knife to get the material down to the size I want to work with it. Again, when I was talking about feather sticks, normally with this I would have to kind of work my wrist to get that effect, but notice how I just pull straight to me and the angle of that blade is naturally going to do the work for me. Start right there at that tooth and just pull. You can see it goes right down to the tip, peeling that material off. I love draw cuts because it allows me to see where the blade is touching the wood, and it allows me to control exactly what I'm doing. But it's just amazing how well my hand fits all those curves, those subtle curves of this handle, to make it just totally comfortable in these different grip positions. So once again, great job on that, William, as always. A lot of times I find myself making these little trap triggers like this, and this little hook right here makes a great way to get down in there in that little delicate area and clean that out. Of course, having a nice tip as well makes it easy to come in and clean that out, thin that out just a little bit to make a good functional trap trigger. And I really like using this area on the knife on these WCs and just kind of pulling that thing to me. Does a great job of cleaning that out. Just come in here and give that thing a little point. We'll have a nice trap trigger to work with. We have this other side of it here. Just come back in here and clean that out just a little bit. Be careful not to take too much off. This side is pretty thin. It looks pretty good. All right, there we go. Good little promontory peg or one stick trigger. Bait this little point right here, get us a deadfall. We'd have a functional trap. Fun little delicate bushcraft style tasks. Always good to test your knife with these types of things. Now, of all the carving and cutting that was seen on this video today, I've probably done triple that amount that you didn't see. And I have not touched this knife up yet. And just to show you, that thing is still hair popping sharp. I'm not going to shave my whole arm. Yeah, you can see it'll definitely shave. These WCs really hold an edge well. Now, a lot of people are going to be really nervous about sharpening or honing this knife. And as William says, you sharpen a knife once, you hone it for life. It's so easy to come in here with that little scanty edge and just tilt your knife. You'll feel the edge meet right to that ceramic rod right there. And now just follow that thing down. It's the same bevel from here all the way to the tip. I think William said it's a 12 or 12.5 degree angle. But he uses it basically, it's like a scandy all the way down. past that tooth, I can still feel my blade. You can see that. Still feel my blade right in contact with that and just hone right out through the tip. If you're not comfortable, you can come in here and do this part with the rod. And then you can always put this on a stone, a little pocket stone. I love the little Easy Lap ceramic stone, so I'll use that a lot of time on this part. But there's no reason you can't take a ceramic rod and just touch that whole knife up. Again, I just tilt it. I can feel it meet against the blade and then just slide that thing to me. It's just really easy. A lot of people fear these multi-grind knives, but it doesn't have to be that difficult. Just touch it up often on a ceramic rod and that thing will stay sharp for life. And even right now, I mean, it's just, every part of that blade is just sticky sharp. All right, so I could go on and on using this knife out here in the woods, doing some bushcrafty and camp style tasks, but that's really not my purpose in doing this video today. Mainly, I wanted to show this knife in case there's some of you guys who are interested in it and just wanted to see a little more detail up close and what it's capable of. And that's really what I wanted to do, is just share my thoughts in actually using this knife out in the woods. I will say that when you look at the knife, that's one impression, but when you actually use it, the design becomes much more apparent. Every curve on this knife and all of the WC knives that I've handled has a purpose. William doesn't make knives for looks, he makes them for function, and I've definitely found that to be true with every knife that I've used from WC. I will say that not every WC knife I've used is one that exactly fits me or my intent, but they've all been high quality and again designed with a purpose. This is a knife that's not exactly what I designed. You'll hear more about my design coming up very soon, but if this was the knife that I had out in the woods, I'd feel very confident. It's just solid as a rock, and again, it's very functional for that bushcraft, campcraft task, or even just an EDC knife. It's comfortable, and as you can see, it can do a great many things. So I really like this one. I know I will carry it more. Again, it's not my design, but I really like the design, and I see completely what William had in mind when he made this knife. And it may be the absolute perfect knife for some of you guys who are appreciative of this multi-grind and all of the functions that this can perform. So I want to thank you guys for your time and interest. Make sure you go and check out WCKnives.com. William also has a YouTube channel, so check him out here. And also make sure to check out my good friends at Ridgerunner Blades. You can find them on online, ridgerunnerblades.com. I'll put a link down below in the description box. And if you talk to them, the shot caller there, as he calls himself, is Jason Wellborn. If you contact them, make sure to let Jason know that you heard about them from the Black Hat Bushcraft channel, and I appreciate that. Thank you guys again for your time, interest, and support. I look forward to talking to you with another video again very soon, and until that one, as always, be safe, take care, God bless.